In a world where kindness is often overlooked, one young waitress gave from the little she had, feeding a quiet stranger out of pure compassion. But what happened next will leave you speechless, and maybe restore your faith in humanity. Welcome to Larry's Zone, a space dedicated to sharing emotional and heartwarming stories, capable of healing hearts and reminding us of the importance of empathy in human lives. The small corner diner buzzed with life each morning, plates clinking, coffee, machines hissing, and laughter echoing from regulars who never missed their eggs and toast. Leora, a soft-spoken waitress with warm eyes and tired feet, moved from table to table with practiced grace. She wasn't fast, but she was kind, and that kept the tips coming. Every day, Leora folded her hard-earned dollar bills into her apron, pocket, counting them in her head. A portion went into her food budget, a little saved for rent, and recently, something new. A small part was set aside for a man by the window. He came in quietly about 2 weeks ago. No order, no fuss. He sat on the far side of the diner, near the window, as if trying to borrow warmth from the sun. His coat was threadbare, his beard grown in uneven patches, and his shoes, well, they had seen better days. But his eyes were gentle, watchful, kind. Leora had noticed him from the start. The first morning, she brought him a cup of coffee. When he tried to refuse, she simply said, "It's paid for," even though it wasn't, yet. The next day, she added toast, then eggs. One day, pancakes with syrup. She paid for it all. Some days, the tips were enough. Other days, she skipped the bus and walked the 3 miles home. Her legs ached, but her heart stayed light. "You feeding the stray again?" sneered Mindy, another waitress, one afternoon as they cleaned up after the lunch rush. "He's not a stray. He's a person," Leora replied calmly, wiping down the counter. "Yeah, a person who doesn't pay," Mindy shot back. "You're not a charity, Leora. You can't save everyone." Leora didn't answer. She wasn't trying to save the world. She was just trying to give someone a warm meal, something she wished someone had done for her years ago when she was nearly starving, working 2 jobs just to afford rent and rice. She had never forgotten how it felt to be invisible. Now she saw someone else who looked like he hadn't been seen in a long time. That evening, Leora approached the man's table as he finished the small plate of food she'd bought him with her last tip dollar. He looked up with tired eyes. "You don't have to keep doing this," he said, voice low and rough. "I know," she smiled, "but I want to." He stared at her for a moment before speaking again. "I'm Tom." "Leora." There was silence for a moment, a quiet, soft kind of silence that settled like a blanket. It wasn't awkward. It was peaceful. "You ever get tired of this place?" Tom asked, glancing around the diner. Leora gave a small laugh. "Every single day, but I like the people sometimes." He nodded. "You're one of the good ones." She didn't say anything to that, didn't know how. Praise wasn't something she was used to. The next day, Leora arrived early. She used the extra minutes to pick up a warm croissant from the bakery across the street and tucked it into a paper bag with a small note. No one should feel forgotten. L. She placed it on the table before Tom arrived and went about her morning routine. When he walked in, she caught the faintest smile cross his lips as he found the bag. He didn't look for her, just sat down and ate slowly with care, like each bite mattered. By now, some customers had noticed the pattern. A few left extra tips when they saw her drop food at Tom's table. One elderly woman once whispered, "That's the kind of kindness this world needs more of." But others rolled their eyes. One teenage busboy muttered under his breath, "Guess, being poor gets you free breakfast now." Leora didn't let it get to her. That night, as she walked home with aching feet and an empty wallet, she passed by an old man playing a harmonica on the corner. His music was slow and sad. She dropped the last coin in her pocket into his cup. A soft "thank you" followed her down the street. She smiled. Leora didn't have much, but she had enough to give. And that, she believed, could change a life. What she didn't know was that Tom had once lived a life very different from the one he lived now, one filled with wealth, power, and connections. A life he'd walked away from after it all crumbled. And now he was watching her, learning her, remembering every act of kindness. Something was shifting, and soon Leora's world would never be the same. Leora had always believed that kindness didn't need a reason. It was something she carried deep in her heart, something her late grandmother used to whisper as she tucked her in at night. Be the sunshine in someone else's storm. That morning, the air was brisk, and the streets still wore the greyness of dawn. Leora wrapped her scarf tight and hurried toward the diner. Her shoes were worn from walking back and forth every day to save her bus fare. She could have taken the bus, but instead she chose to walk, keeping that extra bit of change safely tucked in her apron pocket. For Tom. The bell above the door jingled as she entered, and she gave her usual warm smile to the sleepy-eyed cook and the manager, who grunted a tired greeting. She slipped into her apron, tied it at her waist, and stepped onto the diner floor like she always did, smiling and ready. Tom was already there, sitting at his usual window seat. He looked rougher today. His beard was thicker, his coat older, and his eyes a little more sunken. But when he saw Leora, he straightened slightly and gave her a weak nod. Leora approached him with her usual cheerful tone. "Morning, Tom. You hungry today?" He hesitated before answering. "Only if you've got any leftovers." Leora laughed gently, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "I've got something better than leftovers today," she said with a wink. "You just sit tight." She turned and headed to the kitchen, ignoring the way one of her co-workers, Marcy, snorted behind her back. "There she goes again, feeding." "A stray," Marcy mumbled loud enough for others to hear. Leora said nothing. She was used to the comments now. They didn't sting like they used to. Every time she handed over a warm plate of food to Tom, it reminded her that being kind wasn't always easy, but it was always right. She took the tip money she had made from a cheerful family earlier that morning, $5.35. It wasn't much, but it would cover Tom's breakfast. She gave it to the cashier quietly, then plated up some scrambled eggs, toast, and a few sausage links. She added a small cup of coffee too, black, just the way Tom liked it. When she set the tray down in front of him, Tom blinked slowly. "You didn't have to do that," he said. Leora smiled, her eyes gentle. "I wanted to." He stared at her for a long moment, his fingers wrapping around the warm coffee cup like it was a lifeline. "You remind me of someone," he said. "My daughter." Leora's smile faltered for just a second. "Where is she now?" "Gone," he said simply, looking back out the window. "Long time now." The diner buzzed with the sound of dishes clattering and conversations weaving between booths. Leora stood there for a moment, not sure what to say. She wanted to ask more, but something about Tom's posture told her not today. "Enjoy your breakfast, Tom," she said gently. "I'll check on you in a bit." As the morning rolled on, Leora worked double time. She carried heavy trays, cleared sticky plates, smiled through rude complaints, and stood for hours without a break. Every step she took reminded her of her aching feet and the long walk home waiting for her later. Marcy caught her during a lull near the soda machine. "Seriously, why do you even bother?" she asked, rolling her eyes. "That man's not your responsibility." "I know," Leora replied simply. "Then why?" Leora thought for a moment. "Because if I were in his place, I'd want someone to notice I was still human." Marcy shook her head and walked off, muttering something about Leora being too soft for this world. Maybe she was. But as the sun climbed higher in the sky and Tom finished his plate, He stood slowly and came to the counter. "Thank you, Leora," he said, quietly. "For what?" she asked, wiping down the counter. "For seeing me." Leora paused, her eyes meeting his. There was so much behind those words, so much weight. She didn't need to understand it all, she just nodded and smiled. "You're welcome, Tom." That night, as she walked home with tired feet and a light heart, Leora passed the flickering street lamps and closed up storefronts. The city could be cold, cruel even. But as long as she had the strength to walk and a little change in her pocket, she'd keep doing what felt right, because some people needed food, some needed warmth, and some, like Tom, just needed to be seen. The days slipped by like falling leaves, each one carrying a new version of the same rhythm: sunrise, diner, smiles, tips, and Tom. But something about the way Tom sat a little straighter, or how his eyes met Leora's more easily now, told her that things were changing, quietly, slowly, but surely. It was a Friday morning when Leora noticed it. A small bouquet of flowers sat on the corner of the counter where she kept her order pad. Delicate white roses, still fresh with morning dew, wrapped in brown paper with a single handwritten note tucked inside. "For someone whose kindness is louder than words. T." She stared at the note, her heart fluttering. No one had ever given her flowers before. Not like this. Not anonymously, not thoughtfully, and certainly not while expecting nothing in return. Marcy leaned over to peek. "Ooh, is Romeo finally making a move?" she teased, smirking. Leora shook her head, quickly. "It's not like that." "Please," Marcy laughed. "You've been feeding that guy for weeks, like he's your pet project. If I were him, I'd be in love already." Leora flushed. She didn't do it for love. She did it because it was right. Still, the roses made her chest warm in a way she couldn't quite explain. Tom didn't mention them when he came in that morning. He simply sat in his usual place, smiled softly when she brought him his coffee, and gave her a quiet "thank you." Nothing more. But Leora noticed something new in his demeanor, a calm, almost peaceful energy that hadn't been there before, like the weight he carried had become just a bit lighter. Later that day, whispers started swirling around the diner. "He's not really homeless, you know. I heard he used to be rich, like really rich. Word is he lost everything, in some business crash, lawsuits, the works." Leora tried to ignore them, but curiosity bloomed quietly in her heart. Could it be true? She didn't ask Tom, she wouldn't pry, but she did begin to notice things she hadn't before. The way he folded his napkin precisely after every meal. How he carried himself with a certain quiet dignity. And once, when he took a call outside, she glimpsed a shiny, expensive-looking watch under his worn coat sleeve. Strange. Still, no matter who Tom had been, it didn't change who he was now. And it certainly didn't change what he meant to her. That evening, the diner was quieter than usual. Leora took a moment to sit at Tom's table after her shift ended, sipping from her own cup of lukewarm coffee. "I like the flowers," she said gently, not looking at him. Tom's lips curved into the faintest smile. "I thought you might." "You didn't have to." "I know," he said, "but I wanted to." She looked at him then, really looked. His eyes were lighter now, the shadows beneath them not as heavy. "You're getting better," she said softly. "I'm remembering how to breathe again," he replied. "Thanks to you." They sat in silence for a few moments, the hum of the neon lights and distant honks from passing cars, their only company. "You don't owe me anything, Tom," she said suddenly, as if sensing a weight in his voice. "I know," he said again, "but some debts aren't about money. Some are about grace." That night Leora walked home slower than usual. She wasn't tired. She was thinking. Who was Tom, really? And why did it feel like her small act of kindness had triggered something far bigger than either of them could have guessed? Whatever the answer, she knew one thing for sure. This story wasn't over. It was just beginning. The weather had turned colder, and with it came the kind of wind that sliced through even the thickest jackets. The city wore a grey coat of drizzle and fog that Monday morning as Leora arrived at the diner, her cheeks red from the cold and her hands stinging. She found Tom already seated in his usual spot, a steaming cup of coffee in front of him, black just as he liked it. She blinked in surprise. She hadn't served him yet. "Someone already got you coffee?" she asked as she walked over, brushing raindrops from her hair. He looked up and smiled. "I think I'm finally getting the hang of asking for things." Leora grinned. "Well, look at you." But she could see something behind his smile, an edge, a tightness, like he was trying to hold something together. She didn't ask. Not yet. As the hours passed and the diner buzzed with the lunch crowd, Leora noticed something else. More whispers. This time they weren't just about Tom. They were about her. "She's spending too much time with that guy. Did you see? The flowers? I bet he's playing her. She's too naive. He's just using her." Leora kept her head down and worked harder, but the words stung more than she expected. She was trying to be kind. Why did that bother people so much? After her shift, she found Tom outside under the awning, waiting for the rain to ease. "You okay?" she asked. Tom hesitated, then exhaled. "I've been thinking," he said, staring out at the wet sidewalk. "About everything." Leora didn't say anything. She just waited. "I wasn't always like this," he began. "A year ago, I had a different life. I was a CEO, owned real estate, drove a car that cost more than this entire diner, had people around me all the time, friends, family." He paused. The rain pattered steadily around them. "Then I made a mistake. Trusted the wrong people, lost a deal, lost money. Then I lost my wife." Leora's breath caught. "Oh no." "She got sick," he continued, "and I couldn't afford the treatment anymore. She died hating me, said I let everything crumble." "That's not fair," Leora whispered. "Maybe not, but it was real." He turned to her now, his eyes red. "I never told anyone that. I didn't think I deserved to, but you looked at me like I was still someone. You are someone, Tom." He stared at her, eyes shining. "I was ready to give up," he said. "Then I walked into this diner, and you gave me breakfast." With a smile, Leora's throat tightened. "I thought you were just being nice, but day after day, you kept showing up. You gave me your time, your tips. You walked home just so I could eat. You don't even know me, but you gave like it didn't cost you anything." "It cost me," Leora said softly, "but not as much as letting someone feel invisible would have." Tom let out a shaky breath. "I want to repay you, Leora. Somehow. I can't explain it all yet, but please trust me. There's something I'm working on." "You don't owe me anything," she said again, but this time Tom shook his head. "No, I do. And not just for the meals, for reminding me I was worth more than my worst mistake." They stood in silence, the rain slowing to a light drizzle. Back inside, Marcy watched through the window and scoffed. "She's in for heartbreak," she muttered to another co-worker. "No one does all that and gets anything but pain." But Leora wasn't thinking about heartbreak. She was thinking about how sometimes the smallest acts of kindness cracked open the biggest doors. And maybe, just maybe, something was finally about to change for both of them. The chill in the air had faded into a gentler breeze. It was the kind of morning that hinted at spring, hopeful, fresh, and full of unspoken promise. Leora was wiping down a table near the window when she noticed something odd. Tom hadn't shown up. It was the first time in nearly 2 months he hadn't arrived before her shift began. She checked the clock. An hour passed, then 2. A quiet worry settled into her chest. She tried to focus on her tasks. pour coffee, smile at customers, fetch extra napkins, but her mind kept drifting back to him. Was he sick? Did something happen? Just before noon, the bell above the diner door rang. She looked up and froze. Tom stood there, not in his usual worn jacket, but in a clean navy blue coat that fit him well. His hair was neater, combed back. His shoes looked new. His face was shaved clean, and something about his posture made her blink. He didn't look like a man down on his luck. He looked successful, confident, like someone who had walked out of a boardroom instead of a shelter. "Tom," she whispered. He smiled. "Hey, Leora, you look different." "I had a meeting this morning," he said, "and a realization last night. I've been hiding for too long." She approached slowly, uncertain. "Are you okay?" "I'm better than I've been in a long time, and part of that is because of you." Before she could respond, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope. He held it out to her. She took it and opened it carefully. Inside was a single elegant card. "Dinner with me tonight, 7 p.m. Dress nicely, trust me." Leora looked up, confused. Tom shrugged. "I'd like to take you somewhere special. You've done so much for me. I want to do something for you." "I don't know," she murmured, heart racing. "You don't have to decide now. Just consider it." And with that, he turned and walked out. Leora stood there for a full minute, holding the card like it was made of gold. Marcy walked by and snorted. "Looks like you were right all along. Your charity case turned out to be Prince Charming." Leora ignored her. That evening, she stood in front of her small mirror in the one-bedroom apartment she rented above a laundromat. She wore a simple navy blue dress, her nicest. She'd never had a reason to wear it before now. Her heart pounded as she approached the location on the card. A tall glass building with a sign that read, "The Horizon Room," one of the most luxurious rooftop restaurants in the city. She hesitated at the entrance, suddenly feeling out of place, but the host smiled at her as if expecting her. "Miss Leora, right this way." She followed him up the elevator to a breathtaking view. Lights glittered below, like stars scattered across the earth. And there, near the edge, stood Tom. He turned when he saw her, and for a moment, everything else disappeared. "You came?" he said, smiling. "I almost didn't," she admitted. "I'm glad you did." They sat, and for the next hour, Tom shared everything, the truth about his past, his former company, the downfall, the loss of his wife, the depression, the shame that led him to hide in plain sight, and then the way her kindness had slowly brought him back to life. "I started consulting again," he said, quietly at first, then more seriously. "I've just signed a contract to become a partner in a firm that's relaunching one of my old projects. Things are turning around." Leora was quiet, taking it all in. "You did all that while still eating at the diner?" she asked. He chuckled. "I couldn't leave without saying thank you properly. And I wasn't just hungry for food, Leora. I was starving for human kindness. You fed both." Her eyes shimmered. "This dinner," she whispered, "is it a thank you or something else?" He reached across the table and gently took her hand. "It's both." The city lights danced around them as silence fell again, soft, beautiful, and full of meaning. In that moment, Leora knew something for sure. Sometimes the smallest choices, buying someone a meal, sharing a smile, giving hope, could lead to the most unexpected, beautiful turns in life. The sun poured warmly into the diner as spring bloomed in full force outside. Flowers lined the streets, birds chirped from rooftops, and people walked a little slower, smiled a little more. Leora stood behind the counter, her apron still tied neatly, a pencil tucked behind her ear. But everything inside her had changed. It had been 3 weeks since that unforgettable night on the rooftop. Since then, Tom had visited every day, not just for coffee, but for conversation, for companionship, and something deeper, the entire. Staff noticed how he still sat by the window, but now dressed in polished suits, and sometimes even took phone calls in hushed tones that hinted at important business. Rumors still swirled, But the tone had changed. Respect had replaced ridicule. She was right about him, Marcy admitted one morning, pouring herself a coffee, and she's glowing like someone in love. Leora smiled quietly, pretending not to hear. Tom didn't try to sweep her off her feet with grand gestures. Instead, he brought flowers once a week, helped mop the floor when the diner was short-staffed, waited for her after late shifts, walking her home like a gentleman from another era. He listened. He showed up. And slowly, surely, he became the safest place Leora had ever known. But one afternoon, something happened that changed everything again. Tom walked into the diner during the lunch rush, holding a folder. He looked nervous, different. He waited until she was on her break, then sat across from her in the booth they'd shared a dozen times. "I've been working on something," he began, "and I wanted you to see it before anyone else." He slid the folder to her. Inside were plans, blueprints, business projections, a logo that read, "The Kindness Cafe." "What is this?" she asked, breathless. Tom leaned forward. "It's ours, a new diner, a place where anyone who walks in hungry will leave fed, a spot that hires people with pasts, gives second chances, and runs on compassion, not just profit." She stared at the papers, then up at him. "You're opening this?" "We are," he corrected gently. "Only if you'll do it with me. I want you to run it. I'll handle the money and planning. You bring the heart." Leora blinked, her throat tightening. "Tom, I'm not a businesswoman." "You're more than that," he said. "You're the reason this idea exists. This is your legacy." Tears filled her eyes before she could stop them. All those nights she walked home in the cold, tired and hungry, wondering if kindness really mattered. And now, here it was, growing into something real. I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say yes," he said, reaching for her hand again. "And maybe say you'll have dinner with me tonight, too." She laughed through the tears. Yes, to both. That summer, the Kindness Cafe opened its doors. Leora stood proudly behind the counter, no longer just a waitress but a co-owner. A leader, a woman who believed in the power of good. Tom stood beside her at the ribbon cutting, his arm around her waist. Reporters asked questions, cameras flashed. But Leora's eyes only searched for one thing, someone in need of a meal, a smile. A moment of grace, and when the first customer walked in, nervous and hungry, Leora stepped forward with a warm plate and said, "Welcome, you're safe here." Because once upon a time, she gave freely from a nearly empty pocket. And in return, life gave her back more than she ever dreamed. Love, purpose, and a cafe built on the magic of one kind heart.